Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the February 7th regular board meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Chambers, would you like to call roll, please?
Oh, I would love to. Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
Here.
Ms. Pritchard.
Here.
Mr. West.
Here.
Mr. Ross.
Here.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to thank the public for coming and remind them that this is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There will be a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the January 10th organizational meeting, the fiscal year 2023 tax budget hearing, and the regular board meeting on January 10th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the organizational meeting on the 10th.
I'll second.
Well, hold it. Let me read all that. Organizational meeting on January 10th, the tax budget hearing on January 10th, and the regular meeting on January 10th.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ross and Mr. Nichols. Mr. Chambers? I'm sorry. Any questions or comments from the board about the minutes? Okay, hearing none.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Nichols.
Aye.
Ms. Pritchard.
Aye.
Mr. West.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, are there any additions, removals, or modifications any of the members would like to make to the board agenda? If not, would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. West.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Mr. Chambers?
Mr. West.
Aye.
Mr. Nichols.
Aye.
Ms. Pritchard.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sable?
Thank you. We have several items to present to the board for the superintendent's discussion items this evening. The first one, I'm actually going to go off script, and I'm happy to see that Mr. Quaid has showed up for our meeting this evening, and I'm going to ask him to stand up and wave if he doesn't mind. He didn't know I was going to do this. I would like to congratulate our speech and debate team, and I'm going to read a little excerpt that I think Mr. Quaid actually wrote. Over the weekend of February 4th to 5th, the MHS debate team competed in the OSDA District Championship Tournament in an attempt to qualify for the team's 20th consecutive trip to states. As a result of that and other qualifying opportunities, all 30 members of this year's debate team will be competing at the state championship tournament in March. This has never happened before and sets a state record for the number of debaters from one team to go to states. This also pushes the total number of MHS state qualifiers in debate to over 300 since the team's founding 29 years ago. I want to congratulate all of our debaters and thank Mr. Quaid. People don't realize that it is a year-round position that carries on for hours outside of school. It's something that is beyond just teaching. It's a passion in his working with our students, and it's a big part of why we see the success with our debate program. And I'd like to congratulate him as a teacher, as an educator, and as somebody who's passionate about what they do. Thank you.
Mr. Sabo, can I just add that Mr. Quaid is also a diamond speech and debate coach, which is a small number of elite level speech and debate coaches. It's a very small number in the state that reach the diamond designation. And Mr. Quaid we're lucky to have Mr. Quaid in our district, and he's one of those few that have that designation. So again, congratulations, Mr. Quaid.
And next up, I would like to introduce Mrs. Cassidy. We're going to do a short presentation on Black History Month and give you an idea of some of the things that are happening in the district in celebration and recognition of Black History Month.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. Like Aaron said, this month is Black History Month, and every year our buildings do great things to celebrate that important month. And today we have Mrs. Halleck from Northrop, who's going to talk a little bit about what her building has been up to this month.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I am Kim Halleck. I'm the principal at Northrop Elementary. And, we really pride ourselves as a district and as a building in moving towards being more culturally responsive. So there's a lot of things that come with that, book choices and writing choices and things that we work into the curriculum. But this month, really, we're able to take time to really celebrate our prominent Black inventors and mathematicians and scientists and authors and politicians and athletes. So one of the ways we do that is, prior to COVID, we brought the school community together every morning for a quick, instead of doing our announcements over the PA system, we would do an in-person, our announcements, student-led, some reminders, PBIS reminders, events, upcoming, things like that. The school community really valued, teachers and staff and students really valued that time. So when COVID hit, we decided we didn't want to go away with that. So we started doing our morning motivator virtually. So one of the ways during Black History Month that we celebrate is every morning, as part of our morning announcement, we have student leaders feature a prominent athlete or inventor or pilot.
Martin Luther King is one of the most important men in American history. He gave the I Have a Dream speech in Washington before 250,000 people. This speech is said to have inspired passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. This gave equality, ended the law to millions, and stopped much of the unfair treatments of African Americans. Martin Luther King Jr. was a civil rights activist in the 1950s and 1960s. He led nonviolent protests to fight for the rights of all people, including African Americans. He hoped that America could be a society where race would not impact a person's civil rights. He is considered one of the great speakers of all time. Meet Jackie Robinson. On April 15, 1947, Jackie Robinson was ready to play a Major League Baseball game. He was a star second baseman for the Brooklyn Dodgers. He injured many people who did not want to see a black man in the major leagues. Jackie Robinson is responsible for opening the door for black athletes to play major league sports. He was the first man to play in major leagues. He led the Dodgers 9 league championships in 10 seconds. In 10 seasons that he played. He was inducted to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1962.
So these were just two snippets, and we kind of clipped those and put those together. We feature one each day. Like, for example, this morning was, I can't remember exactly who our prominent person was, but Mondays are motivational Mondays. So our quote that kind of inspires and that we offer and kind of suggest and encourage conversation was a quote by a prominent black person. So, we're trying to kind of embed all of it to really embrace our culture and embrace our diversity.
Martin Luther King is one of the most important men in
Another way that you'll see that we're doing that is also through taking some of these clips, and so that students have access to this information for their biography reports, for any of their writing, for their nonfiction reading studies, is by embedding them within the Google Classroom. So this is an example of a classroom Bitmoji that a lot of our classrooms feature. And when you click, it's interactive. So when you go into that and open up that Bitmoji classroom, those different links have information or video clips for students. So, again, in this age of technology, having all that information at students' fingertips, but also for families to share at home as well. And then along the line, just sharing the presentation. So this particular slideshow is just filled with our prominent Black, again, inventors and pilots and politicians. And each slide features somebody different. Bessie Coleman. And if you click on Bessie Coleman, on her figure, then an example of just different.
Students with ADHD save 10 hours studying with this Chrome extension. You've heard of Amelia Earhart, right? Of course you have. But have you heard of Bessie Coleman? I don't think so. So let's fix that, because not only is her story inspiring and impressive, but it's first. She got her pilot license 2 full years before Amelia Earhart.
And we don't have to watch all that, but just so you get a gist of kind of how we're trying to embed this month in particular, some Black history facts, and really celebrate it as part of our culture so that it really becomes embedded all year long. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Halleck. Appreciate you presenting today. And I'd like to invite Mr. Whitaker up. I do have several bids for summer work to present to the board. We do roofing work on an annual basis as well as paving across the district. We do it on a rotational basis in order to keep our buildings and our properties kept up. In order to make sure that summer work occurs, we have to start the process this winter. So, Mr. Whitaker.
Thank you. Before I get started, I want to commend Mrs. Halleck as a former building principal. The work that she's doing up there is mind-blowing. I've only been out of the building for 2 years, and we never did anything like that. So that's really impressive, and that's great for the kids in Medina. So, roofs. We had bids that were approved by the board, or the bidding process was approved by the board, I believe, in November. We had 4 companies that came in and offered us bids on the projects that we have. We had 6 roofs that we wanted to take a look at to see if we could get the prices within the dimensions that our consultant gave us. And we ended up choosing 2 of the lower bidders to work on the roofs. We have central offices are going to be done, Medina High School, Evolve Academy, Ella Canavan, the operations building, and the rec center is also up to have some work done on it. Most of these projects that we're looking at right now have either a 20 or a 30-year warranty on them, which will give us hopefully some durability. As Mr. Sable mentioned, it's not the entire roof. These roofs are massive. I've been up on the high school roof a couple of times, and from what I've been told, by the time we finish doing all of the sections one time, we'll be back to start over again at the other end. It takes that long. So there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it hopefully will hold up for us pretty well. We do have one kind of an outlier that I'm bringing to you tonight also, and that's the Fenn project. Fenn Elementary is a much older building and needed some work on it that our consultant said was going to be a significant price using traditional methods. So what we did is we went out, we looked at some different contractors, reliable contractors who've done some work for us in the past, and we're able to get a different bid for the Fenn project. In doing that, we came in about $158,000 under what the projected cost was going to be. So we think that that's going to be a nice addition over there to work on Fenn. And we do have a 10-year warranty on Fenn. We know that Fenn is one of the buildings that, as we continue our redistricting conversation, we may be doing some different things over there. We're saving money, and if we have to do another 10-year, we can do another 10-year once we figure out what that's going to be. But that'll give us some time to complete that project. So those are the bids that you'll have the opportunity to consider tonight. We also had a late paving project that came in on Friday afternoon. We wanted to share it with you today because we have some projects that we need to get considered because of the project or the materials that you've heard us talk about here in the past. The projects we'd like to take a look at would be in the Medina High School parking lot in Lot C, which is the back parking lot. I believe that's where most of the students will park. It's in pretty bad shape, and there's also a road that comes in Homestead back there. The school property runs up to, it doesn't go all the way to the main street, but we want to make sure that that's passable too for students coming in safely. Claggett, Root, Garfield, and Operations are also school buildings that we want to take a look at, those parking lots, and see if we can get some quotes and see if they're within the budget and see if we can address some of the issues that are over there. Two outliers on this project would be Rec Lot. There's a Rec Lot C that we want to take a look at. As you're aware, the city has a joint operating agreement with the rec center, so we'll be considering that offer when it comes in with the rec center. And then we also wanted to take a look at our tennis courts. The upper tennis courts would be the ones that are closest to the parking lot by Fenn, are not in the same kind of shape as the ones that are lower, and I believe they were done a couple years ago, and we wanted to see what it would cost to possibly redo those for our students and athletes. So paving is going to take in quite a bit, including part of our athletic facilities. So those are the projects that you're going to have to consider today. Any questions?
Bob, are we locked in on the cost? So in case the contractors say a supply chain issues or something is going to cause the price to go up, do we lock in what we got
Yeah.
now, the
Yes.
contract now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Once we accept it and they've committed to it, then we're locked in. I believe there's some fluctuations in there, but I believe the process is, I think they're called change orders, that we would have to put in, and they have to be approved by both sides before they could do anything like that.
Okay, and that rec center roof, won't the city pay for half of that?
Yes, the rec center will pay for half of, we split the cost of everything that has to do with the rec center. Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Whitaker, I'm sorry, one last question.
Oh,
You mentioned a 10-year warranty on the roof for Fenn. Is that typical of roof, or is it usually longer for some of the building roofs?
The other buildings, the majority of them are going to be 30 years. Yeah, so it's a different process that they're going to be using, and we can renew that again down the road if we need to.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a contract on the agenda for alternative school placements, and I'd like to invite Mrs. Pazitka up to share information about that contract with the board before it is presented later.
Good evening. Like Mr. Sable shared, there will be a contract that will be coming for board approval this evening. It is to PEP, our positive education program. This contract is for 2 students. We do utilize the positive education program. These are for students that require services that are above and beyond what we can provide in the district. One is actually moving from a different outside placement to this school, and then the other one is a new one that will be moving to the positive education program. So we do try to utilize everything we have in district before we move to an out-of-district placement. Are there any questions with regard to the contract? Great, thank you.
And the last communication I have for the board this evening, I did want to provide you an update concerning end-of-year activities. It felt a little bit warmer and sunnier out there today, despite the 3 feet of snow around us. So hopefully spring's not too far off. We haven't had a long winter, but winter has surely hit us hard. I know there's been some concern, especially amongst our students, in terms of end-of-year activities due to COVID and the pandemic. We've had a very challenging winter season in regards to the pandemic, which has resulted in many activities having to be canceled and or postponed. I am hopeful that that is not going to be the case as we head into the spring, as well as the early summer and the end of the school year. We will be working to make every effort in order to have our end-of-year activities occurring. As a matter of fact, there are some activities which I can guarantee are going to occur. And two of those, one is prom, and the other one is graduation. Graduation is already scheduled for May 21st. I know Mr. Whitaker has already worked on renting and reserving the equipment we need to have graduation again this year out in our stadium. Prom, they're in the process of planning. I can't give you details on exactly what prom is going to look like at this time. We will continue to monitor what's happening with the pandemic. However, things seem to be moving in a positive direction. In addition to that, we will continue to look over activities that are scheduled to occur and make assessments and make reassessments. An example I'm going to share is the winter dance, which was scheduled for this weekend. That is a dance that had been canceled because the pandemic was in such a bad shape at the time when the dance needed to be coordinated and tickets sold. Fortunately, things are looking much better now, and our students had expressed concern for not being able to have that opportunity. And Dr. Tadona, our high school principal, took time to meet with those students, as well as our building organization, our student organization that plans that dance. And I anticipate that a communication is going to be coming out from her before the end of the week in regards to that dance. And it's looking like there's a pretty good chance that that dance just might happen after all. So like I said, we really do want to work with our students and make every effort to make sure that they do have a full school experience. We can't guarantee that everything will happen exactly like it was 4 years ago, but we do want to make things happen. So I do encourage our parents and our students to continue to follow their principals' newsletters. They will regularly provide updates as we get towards those end-of-year activities, and let our parents know exactly how and when those are going to be occurring. One other thing I did want to mention, because I got a question about this today, is rain date for graduation. We're going to handle it the same way we did last year. It's scheduled for Saturday. We will be making every effort to hold graduation on Saturday, which could mean a potential delay if the weather is bad. We will plan on moving forward with graduation if it's a slight drizzle. Obviously, if the weather is too bad to move forward, then the plan is to move it to Sunday morning the next day. And we will provide more detailed information to all of our seniors' families in the coming weeks as spring approaches. But I know people are starting to plan, so the questions are starting to come in. Any questions from the board?
Thank you. Back in 2014, the board gave me authorization to hire an investment group so that the monies that we had sitting in Star, Ohio could be used to favor the board as opposed to just sitting there. Ryan Nelson of Red Tree was chosen to be the investment advisor that we wanted to have, and so Ryan is here today to talk about our portfolio and anything else you need to talk about concerning investments.
Good evening and thank you. Joe Violan is with me here tonight. He's part of the investment team helping pass information out. It's great to see some familiar faces and some new faces to the board as well. So thank you for having us here. This is an annual update that we typically do. We typically do it in December, but December was busy this year for whatever reason, so we're here tonight. I have a brief presentation here to provide about the investments of the school district, but want to take a quick step back and talk about who Red Tree is and just a little bit what's going on in the economy and how the district can invest funds. There are some new board members here, so I want to bring you up to speed on that as well. And then I got to wave at you to move this, right? Yeah. Just a little bit about Red Tree Investment Group. We are a firm that is solely focused on investing public funds across the state of Ohio. We manage a little over $7 billion across the state of Ohio and work with about 180 school districts, just like yourself. We are located in Cincinnati, Ohio, so there's a lot going on down south right now in Cincinnati. And we have, as David mentioned, we've been working with the district since 2014. We help out on a portion of the district's funds and speak with the treasurer's office quite frequently. I know David and I were talking a lot here this past month with some cash flow considerations. We assist on a little over $24 million in assets. And again, we serve as the investment advisor for this piece, but we do serve and help out the district with all of the funds. And additionally, U.S. Bank serves as a third-party custodian. They set between us and the district and who holds the funds that we assist on. Next is just a quick snapshot of who in the world the investment team is, myself and Joe here. But everybody there on the screen assists David and Jeannie and the rest of the folks for the investment needs. On page 5, just real quick economic update. Thank you, Board Member Ron, for bringing up the supply chain and comment on the inflation. There's a lot going on in our world, a lot of promising matters, and there are some concerns. We are coming out of the pandemic, thankfully. With that brings economic growth. Consumers are spending. There's a lot of money on the sidelines from consumers to government entities as well. There's been a lot of stimulus funds. With that has come, and we'll talk more about that with inflation, but it's bringing higher interest rates to our markets, which is good for investments for the school district. So that we'll talk about that in a moment. But for you as individuals, that could be promising if you're investing funds, but maybe not so promising if you're looking to buy a home. Your mortgage rates will potentially be going up. A lot of infrastructure plans across the nation. There's, again, more stimulus funds that's available to pump into the economy, and that's just increasing some of these concerns that we're going to talk about here tonight. Higher inflation. We're at a 40-year high of inflation. You're feeling that every time you go shopping, I'm certain, and every time you want to buy something, it seems like you're getting a lot less when you go to the grocery store. So there's higher inflation. That has been certainly on the minds of investors. The job markets, we have this under a concern. And why is that under a concern? No matter where you go, they're looking for someone to hire. I saw a big sign when we left a Minter today, and they couldn't find people to shovel walks. So that's how bad it's getting. You can't find somebody to shovel walks. So the job markets are positive, that there's plenty of jobs available, but it's really a concern because you can't find workers. And it's still part of this great resignation where people are moving around. So it is a bigger concern. All of this is leading to, and I'll talk more about it in a moment, but the Federal Reserve is going to be taking some actions. And also we have concerns on here for elections. It is an election year for here in the state of Ohio for Senate. So there's always just concerns about what happens with that. So it's something on the minds of investors. Next is, how is that affecting interest rates? This is how the district makes funds off of the monies that they have. Interest rates during the pandemic fell to near zero. And that, I think the last presentation I did was a virtual presentation, I believe, David. And at the time, interest rates were hovering near zero because of all the concerns in the markets. There has been some significant changes here just in the past 60 days with interest rates. We've seen a considerable rise in interest rates, and that is all stemming from the concerns of higher inflation. The Federal Reserve, which controls short-term interest rates, they had their comments this time last year was they were not going to change interest rates. They were going to remain steady. Their tune has certainly changed from this time last year. They were not going to make any changes with Federal Reserve policy to now. The latest read is they may actually move interest rates 7 times this year alone to tame inflation. So stay tuned for what happens with that, but interest rates are on the rise. That is good for monies that we are investing for the district. On the next page, for the board members, the new board members and existing board members and the community, just real quick about investing funds for the school district. There are 3 main investment objectives when investing school district funds. That is safety of principal, that is liquidity, and that is market rate of return. you keep that in order and you keep yourself out of trouble. That is paramount as investing public funds. How are those objectives met? Next page is the permitted investments of the school district. And what we have here on the screen are the allowable investments stated under the Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 135.14. In addition, the district has an investment policy statement that was last updated this past May, and the policy mirrors the Ohio Revised Code as the types of investments that are allowable. And those are listed here on the page. They're all centered around safety of principal and liquidity. All of the investments are utilized by the school district except the last one, which is commercial paper, and that has been a discussion that we have had here with the board in the past. Right now, it is not an allowable investment, and we do not utilize that here at the currently with the district. Something that we can certainly open up again for conversation at some point in the future. And any one investment is a 5-year maximum maturity. So as you can see here, there's no Bitcoin, there are no Apple stocks, there's no Google stocks. It again is all centered around safety or principle. On page 9, just a quick snapshot of the district's funds. Again, we assist on a portion of the district's funds. The treasurer does utilize the services of 2 other outside brokers, Fifth Third Bank and Multi-Bank Securities, to give the district a diversification. In addition to that, the district uses Star Ohio, which is the state-run investment money market pool. And then last, the district utilizes Westfield Bank for their main depository. And this is the information as of the end of January. The Westfield Bank there is an estimated amount. We were working with David as he was closing the books at the end of the month. So those are the overall funds of the school district. And again, they're all diversified with everything that you saw on the page before that, except for commercial paper. As it relates to the portfolio that we assist on, again, the book value is right around $24 million. The average yield is a 0.41, and the average maturity is 2 years. Why is that important? I was just talking to you about interest rates are on the rise, so we need to be concerned about how long things are to mature. And the portfolio is in really good position that we have a lot of maturities here over the next year to take advantage of the higher rates that we're going to see in the market over the coming year and years, as it looks like, from the Federal Reserve. Last, looking ahead, what do we expect? I read a great quote in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. It said, put a helmet on and get ready for the ride. It's going to be bumpy, not only in the fixed income markets, but in the stock markets. If you pay attention to the stock market, it's been a little volatile, to say the least, over the past couple months. So put a helmet on and get ready for the ride. Expect higher interest rates throughout 2023. Again, our investment strategy is going to be focused on a shorter average maturity so that we can continually take advantage of the higher interest rates. And we can't make our decisions without a good communication link between us and the Treasurer's Office, which is what we do have. And David and his staff, I'll again speak frequently to see what's going on here with the district and to trade ideas that we see at our other 180 districts that we work with across the state. So that's the presentation I have here for you tonight in a very quick nutshell about what's going on with interest rates and for the district. But if I can answer any questions, I would be happy to.
Thank you, Ryan. We appreciate you coming out. It's nice to see you again. I do have a question. I always have a question about
I love
commercial
questions.
paper especially.
Yes.
Have you seen with your other districts that do invest in commercial paper, have you seen how does their rate of return been comparing to ours where we have longer maturity? I think it's a 270-day maturity for commercial paper. I'm curious, as you were saying, if interest rates are going to be going up on the shorter maturities, if that is something that would be beneficial to the district.
The commercial paper, as listed there, is a very short-term investment opportunity, and the longest maturity is 270 days or 9 months, so it's a very short-term play. And yes, the answer is yes. In today's markets, there's quite a bit of a difference between investing in commercial paper and other shorter-term investment options. So it could add value to the district. It's not to say that you're not missing out on millions of dollars by any stretch, but It does give you another a tool to invest the school district funds in what we consider a safe investment. Most of our school districts do invest in commercial paper, but we've talked about this before. It's the board's comfort level here, first and foremost. With that, I will say a fellow school district up here in the northeast has a similar thought process with commercial paper, and they called today looking to have that, to revisit the conversation as well. So it doesn't need to be static, and it can be a place where we just tread lightly and add it to the allowable investments and maybe introduce a very small allocation to commercial paper. So there's ways to do that to get the board and every administration and everyone comfortable with the idea. So we can certainly look at that, and if there was any other data that I could provide, I talked to David and would be more than happy to provide that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan, you said 188 districts in Ohio that you represent, maybe in that area?
180 K-12 and another 20 or so career centers and this and that.
Okay, so how many of those ballpark are in commercial paper, would you say?
I would say about 175 of those.
Really?
So, and it's not to say that, it's like my mother would always say, not if you stand on the bridge, if everyone is jumping, that you have to jump. But it is an allowable investment. It is under the Ohio Revised Code, so it is it's set under the guidelines from our state, and the parameters that are in there limit it to the most secure companies on the planet to purchase secure and liquid securities. So, but conversations with here, there has been concerns with that in the past, and but again, there's ways to introduce it that we could slowly introduce it to make everyone comfortable, if that would make sense.
I have a quick question about commercial paper also.
Yes.
Would investing in commercial paper be a viable and safe option given the inflation rates, or would it be a better overall investment to wait until the market maybe settles down and then have that conversation to invest?
Well, if we start this conversation tonight, it may take a while to get to commercial paper. Yeah. In our opinion, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We're investing with what we have in front of us today, and we're keeping the longest maturity is 9 months, so that puts us in October, November-ish as an investment. And we're purchasing like 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months. So it's not like we just go out and just purchase all 9 months. But given today's market where interest rates are, and by the time shorter rates would get to that point, you can make an additional income off of those securities. And it is ultra liquid, and it is again short term, and it has to carry the highest standards and ratings that are available in the markets. But it again, yes, it is widely used, not only from schools, but for cities and counties and other entities across the state.
I just wanted to make sure that the new board members know that, as Mr. Nelson mentioned, Ohio Revised Code does allow that. Our board in the past has not allowed commercial paper as part of our policy, our financial investing policy. So our policy would need to be amended before we would ever be able to begin investing in that. And all because we do allow that part of our policy doesn't mean that we have to. It just gives us the option to diversify our portfolio additionally if we wish to at some point in time.
That's correct.
So excuse my ignorance. I'm an engineer, so
That's all
my
right.
wife would understand this much more than I would, but can you explain very briefly what commercial paper
I would love to do
just
that.
because I'm dumb when it comes
That's
to that
all
sort
right.
of stuff.
No. It's an excellent question. Commercial paper, it sounds like one of those, oh my heavens, what is this?
I'm thinking, at the moment, I'm thinking like sheets of paper, and I know that's not.
Well, back in the day, that's what it was. So commercial paper, in a 2-minute elevator speech, commercial paper is the short-term debt of a company. So I'm going to use a J.P. Morgan Chase bank as for example. So J.P. Morgan, which is the largest banking institution in the world, they issue short-term debt to fund their short-term operations. And it is obligation, it's an unsecured obligation, so you're purchasing the credit quality of JP Morgan Chase, for example, and you purchase the short-term debt, and just like you would purchase a treasury bond, it would mature in 9 months and you get your monies back. And so it's just a short-term debt obligation of a company for their short-term financing needs. So mostly it's issued by banks and if I can speak correctly with my math, automobile industries such as Toyota is a big issuer of short-term commercial paper. So in the money market world, like the big, huge money markets from Fidelity or Vanguard or something like that, those money markets are huge purchasers of short-term commercial paper. They keep that market going. And in our space, again, it also is just not only in Ohio, but nationwide, it's a big investment option. So hopefully that helped. Maybe your wife could do a better job tonight.
Sorry. Yeah, that makes sense. I understand now.
Yeah, it's that's where folks get a little angst with the idea, is that you're purchasing the debt of a company, expecting them to pay you back. So it doesn't have the United States backing, nor does it have FDIC insurance. So you're purchasing it on the fact that if you purchase $1 million today from JP Morgan, in 9 months, you expect JP Morgan to pay you back.
You're purchasing their name and their credit rating.
That's correct. And as Becky mentioned, under the Ohio Revised Code, the parameters that are under the Ohio Revised Code only allow you to purchase the highest quality commercial paper that's available, and it's very, very limited, even the names that we can purchase because of that. Hopefully that helped out there. So slightly. Other thoughts or questions? And again, we can continue the conversation. I'm happy to work with David if you needed any additional data points on that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You all have a great day. Great day. Great evening.
Safe travels
Thank
back
you.
down south.
Go Bengals.
Thank you, Ryan. I just don't know what's going on in Cincinnati, so I don't know what that meant at all. Yeah, some football game. The district bank balance decreased by $11.4 million in December to $57.8 million. This is $5.4 million below last year at this time. The general fund revenues were below last December by $592,000. Foundation funds and other revenue account for this decrease. The general fund expenditures were above last December by $671,000. Personnel services, benefits, capital outlay, and other funding account for this increase. The sales tax fund balance is down to $2.4 million. The district spent approximately $108,000 in December, with majority of this going to summer roof projects. The rec center capital fund balance remains at $102,000. There were no monies spent or received. The district received $46,000 in investment income for December. The total collected for the current fiscal year is approximately $220,000 below last year at this time. And finally, the district true day cash is estimated to be 165 days. This is down from November by 30 days and below last year by 28 days. The district's not had a levy request for additional money since November of 2013. I just want to remind you all that. The most recent strategic plan and 5-year forecast do not call for new money until the 24-25 year. And remember, the true days cash calculation is based on the current cash in the general fund and emergency levies as compared to the current expenditures in the 5-year forecast, divided by 365 days. Have any questions? Thank you. Okay. I have something else here. The state legislature put out that we have to, if we use credit cards and we get rewards for our credit cards, we have to inform the board of the rewards that we get on a yearly basis. We used to have a credit card before I got here used to have a credit card that offered rewards, but we needed to spend, it was a lot, and we never got to that a lot. So we never got rewards before I changed over the credit cards to Capital One. So here in 2021, the district spent roughly $1.1 million in credit card purchases and received $13,512 in rewards monies. Basically, these are cash back rewards. The monies get sent back to us through our bank, and we deposit it in the general fund. For the last 2 years, can't tell you how much was spent exactly, but we received $18,494. So that's my report. I'll do it again next year if you guys want me to. And finally, the board service fund. Becky Parkhurst reminded me that we did not include the board service fund on our organizational meeting, but thankfully, the Medina Career Center did. So she wanted to know what happened to our board service fund, and I said, Becky, nothing's happened to the board service fund. It's still out there for you guys. We just forgot to put it on the organizational meeting. So on tonight's meeting, you'll have a board service fund account. Basically, it's $2 for every student, up to a maximum of, or is it up to $20,000 maximum. So that's will be on tonight's meeting, and if you don't vote for it, I guess we're not going to send you guys anyway. How's that? Anything else you need to add to the board service fund, Aaron?
We're good.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Okay, board communications, if you'd like to go around the horn and
Yeah.
talk about
I'll
committees
go.
or, thank you, Jane.
I just want to congratulate Mr. Douglas and Mr. Locker and all the wonderful acts that were in Spice in early January. It always impresses me, all the amazing talent, and there was a wide range of students involved this year, so I thought that was really good. And just a little plug for the drama department. This weekend, Friday and Saturday, the freshmen and sophomores are going to be putting on Clue in the middle auditorium starting at 7, and it's just, when you walk in, you give them $5, and you can probably get to see a great play and have some laughs and probably stay warm. And then just the last thing I want to say is, all the press that goes out there for the different sports teams, it's mainly about varsity kids, but the JV teams, the freshman teams, the middle school teams are all having great winter seasons, and I just don't want to forget them because they work just as hard as the varsity team, and they do a great job. And just the bowling team finished 5th this weekend, and I think Medina has sending 5 divers to the next level, which is the most they've ever had. So it's a good year, but please don't forget those other kids. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it pretty quick. I just wanted to say I know I've seen a lot of our athletics doing great things out there. Awesome. Keep it up. You're making Medina proud. Mr. Quaid, since you're here, thank you very much. That's the first that I heard about it tonight, so I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you've done, and debate's a great topic to definitely get into. And I think that was all that I had. I just wanted to say, hey, great job to our sports teams. Great job to Mr. Quaid. Great job for all of our kids involved in Spice and everyone that was involved with that. And yeah.
I got a couple things. One, I want to give a shout out to the jazz bands here. I went to the jazz band concert here 2 weeks ago. There was Claggett, Root, the Jazz Ensemble, and the Stardusters. They all performed here at the PAC. And if anybody hasn't heard them, they're all really good. all 4 of them played, all different kinds of music. There was some pop in there. There was some classic, maybe big band, and a little bit of maybe Latin themed stuff. Very, very impressive what these instrumentalists can do, and the directors for that matter too. But you know, a lot of them are staying after school for an hour to practice, or at the middle schools they're coming in at like 6:50 in the morning and practicing. And I would just encourage everybody to come and see them. Plug, they're going to have a Jazzmatazz, I think is what it's called, in March. That's their band fundraiser. So I believe all 4 jazz bands are going to play. I don't know if they're all in the PAC or they're moving between the middle auditorium and PAC, but I got to attend that a couple years ago, but I'm glad it's coming back. And I must say I was personally really impressed with the middle school bands, because most of these kids probably haven't been playing for more than a year and a half, 2.5 years tops. They're really good. They would be high school jazz bands in a lot of places, I think. They're just that good. And piggybacking off what Gene said, I got to attend Spice twice. The first night I got to watch my kid play, which was fun. He was in the band that night. But again, all the kids that performed, really impressive. There's a huge talent pool at this high school in this district. And they were all really impressive. And I think the part that impresses me the most is kids just getting up there on a big stage in front of a lot of people by themselves, mostly. And that's impressive. And the second night I came in, Alex Gabrielson videoed it. He needed a camera operator. I don't know how good the video quality turned out, but I got to see it twice, which was rather enjoyable. The other thing I noticed, and I reached out to Jim Shields on this since he's also our Ward 4 councilman that I was reminded of, especially like this morning and after every heavy snow, I've dropped my son off at the high school and then I drive down Union past Claggett. And like this morning, I saw a young man walking through snow that was like knee deep. And I reached out to him if there was something that maybe we could, I don't know, talk to the council to get people to remind them to clean their sidewalks. He says there's not really an ordinance in the city that mandates that, but what really alarmed me besides that was driving past about a dozen kids walking on the street as cars are speeding around them right there near Claggett. And it's a recipe. If some kid slipped into the street and a car ran him over, it'd be bad. So, but I did mention that to him and see if he couldn't maybe bring it up at a council meeting or something like that. So he was kind enough to get back to me. But that's about it. So that's all I had. Oh, and we were supposed to have a facility committee meeting last Thursday, but that's canceled. But I now understand that's Friday at 8 a.m. So we'll be having that then. That's it.
I just want to, thanks, Andrew. I just wanted to echo what everybody said. And also, you're right, Gene. We can't forget about the JV and the middle school kids. So spot on. But I also want to extend a thank you to our staff. As you saw tonight, Mina and Bob presented, Kim, Aaron, our administrators every day through this pandemic. Continue to grind through it for our kids, and it's so much appreciated. Aaron, your staff, really appreciate that. Our teachers coming to work every day for the kids, and as you saw, we have one great example tonight of what's going on in the classroom with Mr. Quaid. Appreciate everything you're doing, Scott. And I know you're reflective of our entire staff, just high quality, great people. So appreciate that. And I also want to shout out to the support staff, because we did have 2 major winter storms. And, you know, when I run through the high school, mostly through the high school, I see those guys out plowing, and they do a great job. Just want to let you know that. And I know they're at all the buildings plowing and salting. And, making sure that, at least on our property, getting the kids in the building. And I see a lot of it at the rec center too, working with the city employees. So much appreciated to actually our entire staff, administrators, MCTA, and our support staff. And I know Jim Shields mentioned kudos to Rob Travis for getting those buses, keeping those buses rolling. And just thank you, Rob, for everything he's doing over there at Transportation Department. I know he's got his hands full, and it's much appreciated. I talked to some bus drivers, and it's like a smooth operation, and appreciate Rob's efforts. And lastly, I did go to that talent show, and I saw Andrew's son on the drums, and it was kind of interesting. A lot of talent, like you said, and appreciated that show, everybody that had something to do with putting on the Spice show, and loved all the kids and all the performances. It was fun to watch. My wife and I enjoyed all the talent. Thank you.
Did you get to see the conga line on the second night? The kids had a conga line at the stage. It was hilarious. They were having a good time.
Thank you. I also wanted to thank Mr. Whitaker and his staff, the buildings, grounds, custodian, maintenance, everybody. That was a lot of snow to be moved. So we're very grateful that everybody was able to get to work safely and to also get those things going. I know we had basketball games Friday night, so the lot needed clear for that. So thank you so much for everyone for doing their part, and we do appreciate it. Committees are starting back up. Jean and I had a policy committee meeting this past week. No new real policies yet. We just went over our guidelines for what's to come. So we'll be meeting next month with I believe, a big stack of policies to get started on. Curriculum committee will meet next week. I am one of the members that represents Medina City Schools on the Career Center Board. We met January 25th, so that people know there are 9 board members on that board representing each of the districts in Medina County, except for Wadsworth, I believe. And they did implement a mask mandate policy, or I'm sorry, implement a mask mandate policy similar to the one that we have here that's going to be based on a 1% threshold, that if they need to implement that, they will have that. Additionally, they're running up on their snow days. They've had 4 snow days similar to us, or calamity days rather. But because of the number of hours that they're in session shorter time period than we are here, because they have to rely on busing of all the students from all the surrounding districts to get their kids there, and then as well as to get them home. So they have a shorter day. So I believe they're allowed 5 days, 5 calamity days, and then they will need to start making up some days. And that will be done online. We passed a policy that they could do that online if they go over the 5 days. I also had the privilege this afternoon to attend Claggett, where Carson Henning was the winner of the Run for Fun t-shirt contest. He's a student at Claggett, and that was really exciting. He did a great job on that t-shirt, and I think it's already posted on social media, so people can take a look at it, and they can start to register for the Run for Fun event, which I believe will be held in May. Last year, it was a cold and rainy day for that race, so hopefully there will be better weather this year, but everyone should support the foundation and register for that. And the foundation has a lot of events coming up. They have their Be Giving, I believe, in March, and there's an event at the PAC, Magic Gives Back, in April, and the Hall of Fame dinner is coming up as well in March. I think that's all I have, so thank you.
Hey, I just wanted to add one more thing. Another staff congratulations to Mr. Carino, just recently named our head soccer coach for the boys. Wish him congratulations to Mr. Carino, and wish him the best going forward.
Okay, it is now time for public participation. We do have 2 people that did sign up to speak. I will read the rules here. Community members wishing to address the board are asked to abide by the following guidelines. Attendees have registered their intention to participate in the public portion of the meeting upon arrival to the meeting. After those that have registered have spoken, if time allows, the board president will ask for public participation from all other attendees. When you approach the podium, please state your name, address, and affiliation for the record. Please keep comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Amanda Fedor.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight, and good seeing all of you. Most of you I know. But I did want to just keep a
Excuse me.
topic.
I'm sorry. Can you please state your name and your address for the record,
do apologize.
please? That's
Yep.
okay. Thank you.
Amanda Fedor, 916 Concord. I am a mother of 3. I have a child in each school, well, elementary, middle, and high school. So I'm here because, I try to attend every meeting. I missed a couple, but I do watch it, I'm on the road traveling and doing things. So I was a little alarmed with the last meeting. I just want to make sure that with the 1% loophole with the mask mandate, it's still fresh on our brain, fresh in our mind that it doesn't work for everybody. So, and I know I do want to, and I'm glad I came here tonight because I do want to say thank you for pushing for prom. And thank you for pushing for the activities for the kids. I mean, it's much appreciated and it's going to go far. But I do want to make sure we're not painting a picture that, we're doing the best we can, because there are some other things that we can do. So when I was watching the meeting on the Medina Live last month, I heard a parent say that, thank you for solving the mask answer, and it's time to move on and focus of giving them skills to be prepared when we're in situations like this again. And that immediately halted me. It kind of stopped me in my tracks it made me question what exactly are we giving our students that we prepared them for by with mask mandates and canceling dances and doing things that have caused a lot of problems. Now with being a parent and having children in each school level, I'm affiliated with many sports, many families, many students. So I just want to be here maybe as an advocate for them, the ones that aren't coming to you, maybe the ones you don't hear from. I have 2 shy kids that would never speak up. So, and I just want to voice that for them and be, an advocate for my children. But I'm going to bring up, as far as with the 1%, how it's not working, although it's the best you can do. And I know I get emails back saying that the health department is the one that you're following and that's who advises you. What leaves me very confused is how do we have surrounding cities and townships that do not have this mandate but have very similar numbers as us, if not the same. And right now, they're not under 1% mandate. They're not under a mask mandate. They're having their winter formal. They're having sweetheart dances. How could this be possible? How can we be so close following the health department guidelines and being in an area that we live in? That doesn't make sense to me at all. And again, this is hearing from when you're involved with sports and you're a sports parent, you get to meet other sports parents. So when we visit places such as Avon Lake and they have no mask mandates and they have numbers like ours, but they're performing well and they're giving their kids back the, not just education, but the experience that, we went through as students. So it leaves me so many questions, and it leaves me feeling confused. It leaves me feeling at a loss, and it makes me feeling like I have no absolute right. So I want to share a little bit of experience that I have as a parent and what my kids go through. So I've been blessed with children of different ages. Is that 3? But I will put it in the email. It's been pretty traumatic, especially for a kindergartner. So I hope that the board will at least look at the 1% loophole and, consider. I think it should be optional, mask or not mask, period. It doesn't work for everybody. So I thank you.
Thank you. Joe Craddock? No, nope, okay, all right. Anyone else that did not get a chance to sign up? Okay. Thank you. We will move on to our action items then.
First item tonight is a separate item, intent to terminate supplemental contract of a public employee. Before I read through the resolution, I would like to explain it a little bit. This resolution, if approved by the board, does not terminate the supplemental contract. What it does is it begins the due process towards the termination of the supplemental contract. The employee in question, Mr. Kaplak, has the right to a hearing prior to termination. If he chooses to have that hearing, that will be scheduled with the Board of Education. If he chooses not to have that hearing, then the actual termination will be presented to the board at the next regular meeting. Otherwise, the actual termination will not be presented until following the hearing. If the board approves the following recommendation, our intent as a school district is to move forward with our baseball program without interruption. Our intent will be to move with our assistant coaches to continue with practices. I know there's a trip that's in the works as well. That trip planning will continue with the support of our athletic administration. In addition, within this resolution, I am asking for the suspension without pay of the contract for Mr. Kaplak. We would then tomorrow post a head coach position for baseball and work diligently to fill that position of head coach for prior to the beginning of this upcoming season. So I want to make sure that this is clearly understood by the board prior to reading through this and presenting it. Whereas Nick Kaplak is currently employed by the board as a teacher under a written contract issued pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 3319.08 and as a varsity baseball coach under a written supplemental contract issued pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 3319.08, and whereas this board believes a varsity baseball coach is a role model for student athletes and can properly be held to a standard of behavior consistent with the educator's capacity as a role model, and whereas this board believes Mr. Kaplak's conduct as alleged herein below is wholly contrary to his obligations as a role model for student athletes, and whereas the district superintendent has recommended that this board initiate termination proceedings against Mr. Kaplak's supplemental contract as a varsity baseball coach for his conduct as alleged herein below, and has further recommended that he be suspended without pay from his supplemental contract as a varsity baseball coach pending the resolution of such proceedings. And whereas this board agrees with the superintendent's aforesaid recommendations, and whereas Mr. Kaplak has been informed of the charges against him as alleged herein below and has been afforded an opportunity to respond to such charges. Now, therefore, be it resolved pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 3319.16 that the Medina City School Board District Board of Education intends to consider the termination of Mr. Kaplak's supplemental contract of employment as a varsity baseball coach for good and just cause. The grounds for such consideration, each of which is asserted as an independent ground for termination when viewed individually, and each of which is also in the alternative asserted as a ground for termination when considered in combination with one or more of the other grounds herein enumerated are: number one, during the spring season of 2021, Mr. Kaplak demonstrated behavior unbecoming of a Medina City School District coach when he lectured student athletes in an inappropriate, disparaging manner, including belittling certain athletes in front of the team for lackluster performances, aiming disregarding language at student athletes and their parents, and disparaging student athletes' parents for their interference with the baseball team. In total, Mr. Kaplack's post-game lecture did nothing to improve performance or team morale and was an inappropriate coaching method at the high school level. Following this incident, a complaint was filed by the parent of a student athlete alleging that Mr. Kaplack's post-game lecture amounted to illegal harassment. In August of 2021, a harassment investigation was conducted. The district concluded that Mr. Kaplack's behavior did not amount to illegal harassment, but concluded that Mr. Kaplack's behavior did not amount to illegal harassment, but was nonetheless incredibly inappropriate. Moreover, during the investigation, several student athletes described some incidents of notable concern, including Mr. Kaplack's unprofessional demeanor with student athletes, which was described as very blunt, not super friendly, doesn't let smaller things go, and doesn't motivate you. These statements did represent a theme the district heard from every student athlete it talked to, whether they were part of the initial complaint or not. The incident in the spring season of 2021 was another example of Mr. Kaplack's historical pattern of unprofessional and inappropriate interactions with student athletes and parents, which includes another harassment investigation conducted in January of 2019, which similarly found Mr. Kaplack's behavior to be inappropriate. Despite the district's attempts to help Mr. Kaplack improve in this area of his coaching duties, Mr. Kaplack continues to struggle to the detriment of his student athletes and team. The incident in the spring season of 2021 represents another example of Mr. Kaplack's historic pattern of poor student athlete supervision and management, including setting a poor example of appropriate decorum to student athletes. This pattern of behavior also includes student athlete management concerns in April of 2015 and the spring of 2017. Despite the district's attempts to help Mr. Kaplack improve this area of his coaching duties, Mr. Kaplack continues to struggle to the detriment of his student athletes and team. Number 5, the incident in the spring season of 2021 is another example of Mr. Kaplack's historical pattern of making morally questionable decisions, which sets a bad example for his student athletes and harms his relationship with parents, the community, and baseball programs outside Medina City schools. This pattern of behavior also includes incidents from April 2017, May 2019, and July 2019. Despite the district's attempts to help Mr. Kaplack improve in this area of his coaching duties, Mr. Kaplack continues to struggle to the detriment of his student athletes and team. Be it further resolved that in this board's judgment, the specific misconduct identified above, including Mr. Kaplack's ongoing pattern of concerning behavior, has soured his relationship with several important people and entities, including local youth baseball organizations, student athletes, the parents of student athletes, and coaches of programs outside Medina City schools. Consequently, Mr. Kaplack's misconduct has negatively affected his credibility and authority as a varsity baseball coach, thereby substantially diminishing his ability to effectively conduct the essential functions, duties, and responsibilities of the district's varsity baseball coach. And be it further resolved that in this board's judgment, the character of the aforesaid charges warrants Mr. Kaplack's suspension without pay for his supplemental contract as varsity baseball coach, pending final action to terminate his supplemental contract as varsity baseball coach. And Mr. Kaplack is hereby suspended without pay from his supplemental contract as varsity baseball coach, effective immediately. And be it further resolved that the board intends to proceed with formal action to terminate Mr. Kaplack's supplemental contract as a varsity baseball coach at its next regular scheduled meeting unless Mr. Kaplack timely files with the district treasurer a demand for a hearing before this board or a referee, in which case the procedures appearing in Ohio Revised Code sections 3319.16 and 3319.161 will be observed. And be it further resolved that the board authorizes and directs the district's treasurer to promptly furnish Mr. Kaplak with written notice signed by the treasurer of this board's intention to consider the termination of his supplemental contract as varsity baseball coach with a full specification of the grounds for such consideration.
Make a motion that we approve action item G1.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Chambers?
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. West?
Aye.
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Ms. Pritchard?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, I'll do it. Action item number 1, Board Service Fund. Per policy number 10147, the board shall establish a board service fund which shall not exceed the greater of $2 per enrolled student or $20,000. The board service fund shall be set aside from the general fund on an annual basis by resolution of the board and shall be used to pay expenses actually incurred by board members in the performance of their official duties.
Make a motion, we approve action item H1.
I'll second the motion.
Any questions or comments? Just so the board knows, I think Mr. Chambers mentioned when we go to the Ohio School Board Conference down in the fall that these funds are used to pay for that as well.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Ms. Pritchard?
Aye.
Mr. West?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if it please the board, treasurer action items. Action item number 1, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the December 2021 Treasurer's Report. Action item 2, supplemental to appropriations. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following supplementals to the 21-22 permanent appropriations. These are all our title funds and our ESSER funds. These will be changing as the fiscal year goes along. I have a feeling that you'll see most of these back on again maybe 2 or 3 times before the fiscal year ends. Number 3, letter of arrangement. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the letter of arrangement between the Auditor of State and the Medina City School District to ensure services satisfactory to the district's audit requirements for the year ended June 30th, 2021.
Make a motion, we approve action items I, number 1, 2, and 3.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the board?
One question, Mr. Chambers, on that letter of arrangement, I never saw a cost from the auditor. Don't they usually charge us for that? I didn't.
They always charge us, yes.
It was a
I
long
believe
letter.
There was a cost on page, what was it, page
All
8?
right,
page
it was a
9.
long letter. I might have missed it.
Hold on 1 second.
It is 26, not, audit services will not exceed $26,404. It's on page
Got
8.
it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parkhurst.
You're welcome. Do you know, Mr. Chambers, if that is an increase from last year?
No, actually, that is not. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we were at 33,000, and that was because they were testing our title funds more at that point. So.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ms. Pritchard?
Aye.
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Mr. West?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Thank you.
Number 1 is donations, and I always like to point out when our student organizations are giving back to charitable organizations. The funds that these organizations earn is money that our students earn through fundraising, and then the students decide how those monies are going to be spent, how those charitable donations are going to be spent. And I just wanted to point out that there's 2 donations here by the high school student council. The first one's to UNICEF, $500 to help build schools in Africa. The second one from the High School Student Council is to help support the Hall of Fame festivities, which were mentioned earlier. And then the third one here is over $600 by our Root Middle School Student Council. So you can see the important work happening with our student council organizations to help improve animal welfare through the SPCA of Medina. Number 2 is the next 3 years of calendars. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the calendars for the 22-23, 23-24, and 24-25 school years. I know we have many parents waiting in anticipation for these because I've gotten a few questions about it. These calendars are always very difficult to put together. We do coordinate with other districts the best we can while trying to meet our individual district needs. The coordination is important because of the Career Center and the fact that all of our students in the county attend the same Career Center. Number 3, it is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the resolution permitting the Medina City School District membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association for the 22-23 school year. And that is an annual membership. Number 4 is the projects that were presented by Mr. Whitaker. It is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the following resolution for district roofing projects. And then number 5, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve a contract with Environmental Design Group for district paving improvements to include design, bidding, and construction services in the amount of $79,000, also presented by Mr. Whitaker at the beginning of the meeting. And then it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following service agreements. Mr. Ballisto does security for our high school parking lot. I do want to point out that this contract does provide him with a $2 an hour increase. And he is out there every morning and at the end of the day in the police cruiser monitoring the parking lot. The other one is the Educational Service Center contract. You will see periodically changes to our Educational Service contract or ESC contract. We don't do a blanket contract with the Educational Service Center like some districts do, which means that anytime we have a change to that contract, we come back to the Board of Education to make that adjustment. And changes occur when we have changes in student needs for services. The St. Francis one through the ESC, those are just pass-through funds. Personnel. I'm sorry. Yep, Status Solutions, it's to purchase and install of an inbound caller ID interface, which will be used as an automated alerting platform that integrates with the alarm and communication systems for centralized monitoring, alerting, and reporting. So this was a fairly inexpensive addition to add additional security across the district with our calling system. And then personnel. I did want to, as Mr. Ross had mentioned, we are welcoming, upon the board's approval, a new soccer coach with big feet to fill. Doug Carino, I know he's got big shoes to fill, but he'll do an outstanding job. He's done did an outstanding job with our girls. And I have no doubt that that success will carry over in working with our boys program. In addition, we have several resignations on the agenda for the purpose of retirement, and I'd like to invite Mr. Shields up at this time to present those individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Sable. It's always a great pleasure, but bittersweet, because these are really great employees, and you're happy for them that they get to retire, but you're sad for the district. So we have 5 tonight I want to talk about. I'm going to start with Chris Douglas, who's a secretary at our central office in the Department of Pupil Services, but actually works directly with Mina. So I'm going to let Mina talk a little bit about Chris, and then I'll cover the rest of them here.
Good evening. I've had the privilege to work with Chris Douglas since my time starting with Medina City Schools. Chris is retiring with 25 years plus of service. She was originally hired as a Garfield Elementary secretary, where she worked for 12 years before making a switch to Medina High School as secretary for 7 years. The last 7 years, she's worked in the Department of Pupil Services, responsible for supporting the district's special education programs. She'll be very missed by not only our department, but I think all of our intervention specialists who call her regularly. And I know she's always helped calm them down and helped them through IEPs, but we wish her all of the best in her retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mina. The next employee I'd like to talk about is Ann Lakatis, Claggett paraprofessional. Ann was hired in 1998 in the district's food service department. She spent 3 years working here at the high school in food service, and then transferred to a paraprofessional job at Medina High School. And then in 2002, she switched to Claggett as a paraprofessional. She's actually been at Claggett then the last 20 years. The majority of that time at Claggett, she worked in our intensive needs classroom, working with our students with special needs. The last few years, Ann was actually going to retire about 3 years ago, and I talked her into staying, and she has been the media paraprofessional at the Claggett Library. But this time, Ann says there's no going back. She's ready to retire with 24 years of service. So I get a kick out of Ann because she, with her students that she worked with at Claggett, they're now at the high school. Some of her last ones she worked with in the intensive needs. And they come down on the bus at the end of the day from the high school to pick up students at Claggett, and Ann will go out there and surprise them on the bus. And it's like a rock star when she gets on there. They are so excited to see Mrs. Lakatis come out and see them on the bus. So. Our next employee that is retiring with 13 years of service is Angie Gesowich. Angie is a server currently at the high school in the food service department. She's the cashier in the food service department at the high school. She gets to, one of the greatest things she says is every day she gets to see almost every student come through, and she likes to comment on what they're eating and just catch up with them. And it's just a great, she said it always makes her feel so good to talk to our students as they come through the line, because they're always in a good mood at lunch usually. Prior to working as the cashier the last 4 years, she was a cook at both Medina High School and 1 year at Fenn. She is retiring though now, and she started in 2009 and will be retiring with 13 years of service. 2 teachers I want to talk about. The first one is Terry Brady. Terry's a really interesting individual. She's a teacher at first grade at Wade Elementary. She's retiring at the end of the school year with 9 years, as I talked about, but Terry has a really interesting past. When she first graduated with a Bachelor in Education, she taught at Kent and Solon, and then went back and became a nurse. So for several years, she was a nurse. Then she had 2 boys that were graduates of Medina High School here in Medina City Schools, and she stayed home. But while she stayed home, she became very active at Fenn Elementary School. She started as a volunteer Spanish instructor, teaching students Spanish, and then a math program coordinator. When Terry was ready to go back into the working world, instead of going into nursing, she had decided she missed teaching, and she was hired at the nursery to be their kindergarten teacher. And about 9 years ago, Terry decided that it would make sense to come back to a public school district. And she applied here, and we called her in. And I will tell you, I've never had more references from parents here in this community whose children had her, or she had their children at the nursery as a kindergarten teacher, telling us we just have to hire Terry. She's the greatest. And she has been every bit of that, as what parents told us. She just has done a wonderful job. 9 years in the district, 8 years at Wade. She did 1 year over at Northrop when she got bumped around involuntarily, but it's going to be a real loss. And I talked her into one more year. She was ready to go last year, but she told me absolutely not, don't even ask. So she is definitely ready to retire, and we are going to miss her. Just a great background and has done a lot for this school district in many ways. And then our winner tonight with number of years of experience is Therese Stefanko. Therese was actually hired at Medina Junior High as a special education teacher originally 31 years ago. She's retiring with 35 total years in education. Her first 18 years, she worked with students with special needs at both Medina Junior High and then moved over to AI Root when it opened. And the last 18 years, she has switched from special education into teaching sixth grade, both language arts and social studies. Therese's husband, Joe Stefanko, retired a year ago. Joe worked at AI Root with her also, and he started in special education and then switched. So they both did many years in special education, and Joe got a year ahead of her as far as retirement. And Teresa, unfortunately, has been out on a leave this year. She is battling an illness, so she's not going to get to be here for her last year, but we wish her the best, and we wish her and Joe a very happy retirement together. So I know she's looking forward to catching up with Joe, because I think he's been having some fun for the last year. So she looks forward to also enjoying retirement here. But together, 107 years of service to Medina City Schools. Some great employees. We will miss them, but we wish them all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. And just one last personnel item I wanted to point out is the classified food service substitute pay rate. As the board knows, we've been making efforts in order to increase attracting substitutes and really employees across the board. And a suggestion, recommendation we had out of food services was to combine the substitute positions for cook and server, and to make it one increased rate of $9.50 an hour, not only to attract more people, but to create more flexibility in the assignment of those subs as well.
I'll make a motion to approve superintendent action items J 1 through 7.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Does the board have any questions or comments regarding these action items? Hearing none?
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Ms. Pritchard?
Aye.
Mr. West?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the last item on the agenda is the Ed Choice vouchers that we had discussed last month. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the resolution for membership in the joinder of the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy of School Funding for the 21-22 school year. Whereas the deduction of funds from the school district by the Ohio Department of Education and payment of those funds to private schools, educational choice voucher funds, diminishes the amount of funding and the levels of educational opportunity for the education of the pupils in the district. And whereas the deduction of school voucher funds from the school district further reduces the funding available to support the additional needs of district minority pupils, pupils in poverty, and pupils within disabilities. And whereas the deduction of school voucher funds from the school district can result in the involuntary transfer of district local tax revenue approved by the voters of the district for the support of the district's operating expenses to private religious schools for the support of those schools' programs in violation of the rights of the district taxpayers. And whereas the deduction of school voucher funds from the school district increases reliance on local tax revenue to maintain school operations in violation of the Ohio Constitution and clear directives of the Ohio Supreme Court. Now, therefore, the Board of Education finds and determines that the deduction of school voucher funds from the school district is harmful to the district, its pupils, taxpayers, voters, and staff. The Board of Education authorizes and directs the school district's joinder of the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy of School Funding, and directs the district treasurer to pay coalition dues as set forth in Section 3. Coalition dues for the 21-22 school year are the sum of $2 per district pupil, enrollment listed on the most recent report card, except that for ESC boards of education, the due shall be the sum of 20 cents per pupil. or $3,000, whichever is less. Dues shall be allocated by the coalition as follows. 50 cents per pupil shall be initially allocated to the payment of coalition operating expenses. $1.50 per pupil shall be allocated to the support of the coalition's efforts in opposition to the deduction of school voucher funds from this and other school districts. Coalition dues are payable upon passage of this resolution.
I'll make a motion, we approve Superintendent Action Item K1.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Thank you, Ms. Pritchard. Does the board have any questions or comments regarding this item?
If I'm not wrong, this will be the first school district in Medina County to join. Is that correct?
We will be the first district in Medina County to join if approved by the board.
Okay.
I just wanted to remind the community that back in 1997, there was the Ohio Supreme Court case that ruled that the way the state of Ohio funded our public schools was unconstitutional. That has never been resolved. A couple of years ago, Reps Patterson and Cupp tried to do something to give us some more funding, and then back when they were doing the budget, they cut a lot of that out. So we're still struggling with getting our public schools properly funded. Last year, OSBA sponsored a Zoom call with Senator Romanchuk to try to get his support with the monies that were going to come through the budget bill. And he said that they couldn't give us the full amount of funding the Patterson Cup bill, the amounts that they had wanted to through that bill, because they needed to make sure they funded Medicaid and our local prisons. And yes, those do need to be funded, but we really need to give a priority to public schools. And I think it's important for us as a district to support public schools, to support funding. I think it's important for us to be a leader in our area here. Thank you. If there's no other further questions, Mr. Chambers, you may call roll.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ms. Pritchard?
Aye.
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Mr. West?
Aye.
Ms. Parkers?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I will ask for a motion to move to executive session to consider the appointment, employment, and discipline of a public employee or official.
I'll make a motion to move to executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Mr. Chambers? Sorry.
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ms. Pritchard?
Aye.
Mr. West?
Aye.
Ms. Parkers?
Aye.
Thank you.
No action will be taken when we return from executive session. Thank you all for coming tonight, and have safe travels home.